Okay, so have you ever watched a horror movie and like weeks later you're still thinking about it? Like certain villains just get under your skin, right?
Oh, absolutely. Some of those images, they just stick with you.
We're tackling one of those horror heavyweights today, Michael Myers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but this isn't just about Halloween the movie, although we'll definitely be getting into that. This is about the idea of Michael Myers.
Right, because he's gone way beyond just that one film.
Totally. He's like the masked slasher, instantly recognizable, decades worth of sequels and remakes. But why? What is it about this guy that still freaks us out?
That's what's so fascinating to me. He's almost more of a force of nature than a character, especially when you look at how he was first introduced.
And that's what's so cool about these deep dives. We get to unpack all of that. So starting with Halloween from '78, low budget, super simple, but it punched way above its weight.
It really did. And, a lot of our sources point to what the film didn't do that actually made it so effective.
Oh, I like that. Tell me more.
We'll think about other horror from that time, a lot more blood and guts.
Right. The gorier, the better, it seemed like.
Yeah. But Carpenter went for something different. He understood the power of suspense, the atmosphere, the anticipation. That's what makes Michael terrifying.
Oh, totally. Like when he's just lurking in the background, you don't even see him clearly. That's scarier than any jump scare.
100%. It
Wow.
plays on our primal instincts. It's the stuff you don't see that gets you.
And you know what else they didn't give him? A backstory. No tragic childhood, no convoluted reason for snapping. He's just evil,
Yeah.
pure and simple.
Which at the time was pretty groundbreaking. I mean, so many villains, they were trying to make them sympathetic,
Yeah.
understandable even.
Not Michael.
Nope. And by doing that, by not giving us a reason for his actions, he becomes the boogeyman, literally. He's the thing lurking in the dark that we can't explain away.
Ooh, okay, I get that. And speaking of things that are kind of unexplainable, how about that mask? It's so iconic, but do you know where it came from?
Oh, is this the Captain Kirk story?
Yeah. It's crazy. They took this cheap, like, Star Trek Halloween mask, painted it white, and bam, horror icon.
And, I think that adds to it, even if it wasn't intentional. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's not some elaborate monster face,
No,
right?
it's just blank.
Exactly. That blankness, it's like he's been emptied out, dehumanized. And that makes him even more unsettling because you can't read any emotion on his face. There's nothing to connect to.
Makes you think, like, what's going on behind there, but also you kind of don't want to know, you
Is
know?
that primal fear again?
And it's not just the look. Don't forget the music, that piano theme. Just hearing it, it's like instant chills.
Oh, it's masterful. So simple, but so effective. It's like Pavlovian conditioning. At this point, our brains hear that music and we're instantly in that world feeling that unease.
Okay, so we've got this terrifying figure, this haunting music, a lack of any real explanation for why he does what he does.
Hmm.
It all works on this instinctual level. But what is it about Michael specifically, do you think, that still has this grip on us decades later?
Well, it's like with a lot of horror villains, you can kind of get in their heads, right?
Yeah, like there's a reason, even if it's totally messed up, why they do what they do.
Exactly. Trauma, revenge. But Michael, he's different.
He just is.
Yeah. He's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
a hurricane. You can't reason with a hurricane.
Or outrun one, for that matter.
Exactly. And that's terrifying, right? Because it's out of our control.
That unpredictability, that's
Mhm.
primal, you know?
It really is. And that ties into, I think, a fear we all have to some degree, the fear of the unknown. It's not just about a guy with a knife. It's the stuff we can't control.
The stuff you can't see coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what Michael embodies so well. He's the embodiment of this thing that's bigger than us, that we
Yeah.
can't understand and therefore can't fight against.
Which is brilliant from a filmmaking perspective. Okay, so we've got this, like, perfect storm of fear, the look, the music, the lack of motive. But then the sequels came along.
Ah, yes. The sequels.
Right. And we have to talk about this. Giving Michael more of a story, which some of the sequels tried to do, did it hurt the character?
It's a big debate among fans, for sure. Like, once you try to explain something, does it lose its power?
It's like knowing how the magic trick works. It's not as fun.
Exactly. Some would say Michael is scarier when he's a blank slate. When you try to give him the psychology, it can backfire.
So are you saying the sequels ruined it?
Not necessarily ruined, but it's interesting to look at that 2018 Halloween. It ignored most of the other sequels, went right back to the source.
Hit the reset button.
Right. And it was hugely successful. Why? Because it tapped back into that primal fear. No convoluted backstory, just Michael as this force of nature.
It's amazing, isn't it, how a character that simple can still resonate so strongly.
It speaks to something universal, I think.
Absolutely. And we can't talk about Halloween without mentioning Laurie Strode. She's not our main focus today, but her character arc, especially in the later films, it's fascinating.
It really is. She goes from the terrified babysitter to this total badass.
Yeah.
Ready to take on Michael.
Which, in a way, reflects how our understanding of trauma has evolved, right? Especially for women.
100%.
Yeah.
Laurie refuses to be a victim. She's prepared, she's resilient, and that resonates with audiences.
It's almost like, yeah, this idea that the world can be a scary place and you have to be ready to fight back.
Exactly. And that ties into why Halloween continues to be relevant, even beyond just being a horror movie. It speaks to those anxieties we all have about safety, about control.
About the unknown.
Yes. And horror, I think, gives us a way to process those anxieties in a safe way.
Like facing our fears, even if it's just on a screen.
Right. And speaking of facing our fears,
Yeah.
how about we talk about Michael Myers' costumes?
Oh, yeah. You can't escape him every Halloween. But why him? Why is this the villain we choose to dress up as? It's weird, right? Like, we dress up as the thing that's supposed to scare us. Kind of funny when you think about it.
It is kind of funny. But I think it's more than just that, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's this catharsis to it. It's Halloween. You're supposed to play with that scary stuff.
Oh, totally. Like owning it almost.
Exactly. Putting on that mask, even if it's just for one night. It's like saying, you don't scare me. Even if, deep down, maybe it does a little.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. And, we keep talking about how simple Michael Myers is, but that's kind of what makes him stand out, especially these days.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we're bombarded with information, complicated stories. And then there's Michael. Just exists.
And terrifies us. Decades later, still doing it.
Because he's timeless. He's not relying on some complicated mythology or whatever. He's just there, relentlessly pursuing. That's primal.
Yeah.
It's a fear that doesn't really expire.
So we've talked about a lot where Michael Myers came from, the psychology of fear, why he's endured. What would you say is like the one thing for our listeners to really take away from this whole deep dive?
That's tough, but I think it boils down to this. Michael Myers, as a concept, as this horror icon, he reminds us that there are some things we just can't control. The unknown, random chaos, even death itself. These are fears that have been around forever, right? And maybe in a world that feels increasingly out of control, they hit even harder.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like the world has changed so much since 1978, but those basic fears, they haven't gone anywhere.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, has Michael Myers lasted so long because our fears have stayed the same? Or is it the opposite? Like, does our fascination with him, with these kinds of stories, does that keep those fears alive?
Ooh, okay, now that is a question. It's like, which came first, the fear or the fascination? I don't know, something to think about, for sure.
Well, we've definitely gone deep on this one. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. It's always a trip, exploring these dark corners of our favorite stories. Until next time, stay spooky and maybe sleep with the lights on. You never know who might be lurking in the shadows. Okay, so, are you ready to bust some ghosts?
Hey, always.
Today, we're diving deep into how Ghostbusters became like the ultimate Halloween thing.
It's true, you can't escape it this time of year.
Right, like try picturing Halloween before proton packs were everywhere.
You practically can't. It's wild to think how big that movie became.
So that's what we're going to unpack. Why this movie from way back in '84 is still such a Halloween monster, especially for all of you listening. But first, we've got to set the scene right.
Exactly, because Ghostbusters didn't come out of nowhere.
True. So, paint us a picture of the '80s. What was going on that made a movie about ghost catchers such a hit?
Well, the 80s were kind of obsessed with the paranormal already. We're talking poltergeist, unsolved mysteries, like that spooky stuff was everywhere. America was totally primed for a story about busting ghosts.
So it was like the perfect breeding ground. But what I find so interesting is that Ghostbusters chose to laugh, not scream. It wasn't a straight-up horror movie.
Exactly. It had this whole other energy.
Right. So why do you think that comedic approach works so well? Especially when Halloween back then was taken so seriously.
Good question. I think Ghostbusters gave people permission to laugh at their fears. The paranormal is usually all darkness and dread, but this movie threw the doors open, let in the daylight, and a whole lot of wit. Think about it. A giant marshmallow man trashing New York City.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Terrifying, right.
And
but also kind of hilarious.
okay, that is genius. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is like the perfect symbol for the whole movie. Like, yeah, this is scary, but also kind of adorable. So were audiences just ready for a less intense Halloween, or was it something more?
I think it was a cultural shift, really. Ghostbusters didn't just happen to our thing for the paranormal, it reshaped how we dealt with it. The movie basically said it's okay to laugh at the things that go bump in the night, approach them with fun, with adventure, not just pure terror.
And did that change how people approached dressing up, too? Because let's be real, before Ghostbusters, Halloween costumes were all Dracula, Frankenstein, the classics.
Oh, totally. And then suddenly, bam! Everyone wanted to be a Ghostbuster.
It's true, it's iconic.
It wasn't about mimicking monsters anymore. It was about becoming the heroes, facing them head on, proton pack blazing.
And speaking of iconic, we got to talk about the theme song. Try and get that out of your head after just one listen.
Impossible. It's everywhere this time of year.
Right. Was it an instant hit?
Oh, absolutely. Like overnight, it was the Halloween song. And again, I think it shows that cultural shift, you know? The song itself is catchy, upbeat, even a little mischievous. It dared to find the fun in facing your fears.
But Ghostbusters is more than just costumes and theme songs. It had a huge impact on movies, period. What would the horror comedy genre even be without it?
Totally. Ghostbusters didn't invent it, but it made it legit. It showed everyone how to balance genuine scares with laugh-out-loud humor. Like, think about the movies that followed. Beetlejuice, The Addams Family, they all owe a debt to Ghostbusters.
Okay, but that balance is so hard to get right. What was it about Ghostbusters that made it work so well? There are tons of imitators, but few capture that same magic.
I think it's the characters. For one, you genuinely liked them, you rooted for them, even facing these totally bizarre, often terrifying creatures, their friendship, their quick wit. It made the danger fun somehow.
Yeah, you're right.
It wasn't just about surviving, it was about the joy of the adventure with your friends. And that feeling goes way beyond just horror or comedy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of why we're still talking about it. Ghostbusters gave us that thrill of the unknown, but also the comfort of knowing that even when things get spooky, a little laughter and maybe a proton pack can go a long way. You know, it's funny how Ghostbusters made scientists cool. These weren't your typical, like, action heroes.
Right, and yet they totally worked.
Yeah. Why do you think they resonated so well with audiences?
I think it's because they were more than just grainy stereotypes. They were funny, flawed, they bickered like real friends.
And totally geeking out over their ghost-busting tech.
Exactly. That made them relatable, you know? They were the underdogs, figuring things out as they went. Like, who hasn't wanted to try a proton pack?
Oh, don't even get me started. I've got a whole Pinterest board dedicated to DIY ghost traps.
See? I rest my case.
But speaking of the gadgets, those special effects in Ghostbusters still hold up amazingly well, even compared to all the CGI we have now. Was that mix of practical effects and early CGI part of what made it work?
Definitely. They were so innovative for the time, using puppets, animatronics, this groundbreaking optical stuff.
So cool.
It created these ghosts that felt real and otherworldly at the same time.
Like finding that sweet spot between fantasy and reality. The ghosts were scary, but also kind of charming. Slimers, especially. You gotta love that little blob. But it's funny, for a movie that was so ahead of its time visually, it also feels timeless, you know?
Absolutely. And that's why it still works, because beneath all those amazing effects, there's this story about friendship, facing your fears, finding humor in the unexpected.
Those themes never get old.
Exactly. It's a movie you can watch a million times and still find something new.
For sure. So when you first saw Ghostbusters, who was your favorite Ghostbuster?
Ooh, tough one. You know what? I gotta go with Egon Spengler. He's the brains of the operation, but he's got these hilarious lines delivered so dryly.
Excellent choice. I think I gotta go with Venkman, though.
Yeah.
That sarcastic wit gets me every time.
Classic.
But the humor in Ghostbusters goes beyond just the jokes, you know? It's woven into everything, the dialogue, the action, how the characters talk to each other.
Yeah, it's a whole vibe. That blend of witty banter, slapstick, and just plain weirdness, it's what makes it unique.
And it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
Which is always refreshing.
Totally. They're in on the joke, and that makes it even funnier.
But for all its humor, Ghostbusters has some pretty big themes underneath it all. Like that whole thing about believing in yourself, even when nobody else does.
So true. They were basically laughed out of their fancy university jobs for chasing ghosts.
Talk about dedication.
But they stuck to their guns, believed in what they were doing, and they saved New York City.
The ultimate underdog story. With ghosts.
And we can't forget the music, those iconic themes.
It's so good.
Blending spooky and exciting so seamlessly. It's part of the whole experience.
It really is. It's hard to imagine Ghostbusters without it. For a movie about busting ghosts, Ghostbusters sure wormed its way into our lives, even beyond Halloween.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you caught yourself going, who are you going to call? Like, as a joke?
Oh, all the time. It's practically automatic if anything even seems spooky.
Right. It's like Ghostbusters gave us this playful way to deal with the weird stuff life throws at us. Like, it's okay to acknowledge it, but not freak out.
I think so, yeah. And it wasn't just the catchphrases either. The movie made people genuinely curious about the paranormal.
For sure. Like, remember those ghost radar apps?
Oh, totally. That's Ghostbusters influence, 100%.
No doubt. And Halloween costumes. Forget it. Pro-Con packs are basically as standard as vampire fangs these days.
It's crazy, right? Ghostbusters changed the game. Costumes weren't just about looking scary anymore. It was about being these fun, heroic characters.
And that logo. Forget a jack-o'-lantern. That's the real symbol of Halloween fun.
You said it.
Well, what gets me is they did all that. The humor, the impact. Without sacrificing a good story.
Absolutely. At its heart, it's a classic, the underdog story, This group of friends taking on crazy challenges.
Yeah. They mess up, they argue, but they always have each other's backs.
Exactly.
It's that friendship, that teamwork that really sticks with you. They weren't just a team, they were like a family up against these supernatural threats.
And they showed everyone it's okay to be yourself, even if yourself is a bunch of scientists who love busting ghosts.
And that sometimes facing your fears can be fun, especially with the right tools and some good friends along for the ride.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, folks, looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive. But before we go, I'm going to ask you one last thing. Think about how you see spooky stuff, even just Halloween itself. Has Ghostbusters shaped that view, even a little?
It's amazing how these stories stay with us.
It really is.
Yeah.
But hey, that's what makes it fun, right? Ghostbusters reminded us all to face the weird stuff with some humor, a little smarts, and a whole lot of heart. And hey, maybe a proton pack wouldn't hurt either.
Never hurts to be prepared.
Until next time, everyone.
All right, so are you ready to dive into this debate about The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Oh, yeah.
It's Halloween versus Christmas.
Always a good one?
Is it both? Is
Okay.
it neither? We always get these podcast scripts sent to us, and this one, always goes really in depth on this very question. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to really dig into it.
Yeah, it's interesting how this film, which came out decades ago, back in '93, still gets people so riled up.
It's true.
Like, you've got your diehard Halloween fans, your Christmas traditionalists, and they're ready to duke it out over Jack Skellington.
I know. I think it's because the movie just has this timeless feel to it, It's whimsical and spooky and fun all at the same time. But before we get too far, let's give everyone a little background, shall we?
Sounds good to me.
We're talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas, directed by Henry Selick, produced by the visionary Tim Burton.
Oh, yeah, gotta love Tim Burton.
Right. And here's the kicker. It's based on Burton's own poem.
You can totally tell it's got that Burton-esque charm all over it.
Oh, absolutely. So right off the bat, you just know it's going to be something unique. And that's where this whole debate really takes root, because you've got this classic Halloween setup. I mean, we're talking spooky setting.
Can't forget the visuals.
Oh, yeah, the visuals are incredible. They can make your spine tingle. And of course, you can't have Nightmare Before Christmas without mentioning our main man, Jack Skellington, the Pumpkin King himself.
A skeleton with a heart of gold. Well, maybe not gold.
Right. But he's got Christmas on the brain, that's for sure.
That he does. It's like the creators took Halloween and Christmas, mashed them up and said, let's see what happens.
And what happened was pure cinematic magic. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Tim Burton has said that he never really saw the film as being tied to just one holiday. He envisioned it as this fusion of Halloween and Christmas.
Which just adds fuel to the fire of this whole debate, right?
Exactly. So where do we even begin?
Well, lucky for us, this podcast script we've got lays it all out, starting with the argument for Halloween. And visually speaking, it's hard to deny, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. The characters, especially Oogie Boogie, who's the stuff of nightmares, and Halloween Town itself, it just oozes that Halloween atmosphere.
Even just hearing the opening song, This Is Halloween, it instantly transports you to that world. Pumpkins, ghosts, vampires, all that jazz.
You're sure, for sure. And then there's Jack's title, The Pumpkin King. You can't get much more Halloween-y than that. Our script really emphasizes those strong visuals as a cornerstone of its Halloween identity. But, and this is a big but,
Go on.
the movie isn't just about spooky aesthetics, is it? There's another layer, a whole other world we need to talk about. Christmas.
Ah, yes, Christmas. The other holiday that claims the Nightmare Before Christmas.
And this is where things get really interesting. This podcast script, it points out how the whole plot revolves around Christmas. Jack's fascination with it, his mission to recreate that Christmas magic in Halloween Town, it's what drives the whole story.
It's true. It's not just some passing interest for Jack either. He discovers Christmas Town, and he's completely mesmerized. It consumes him.
I mean, the lights, the snow, the whole spectacle of Christmas, it's like he's never seen anything like it before.
He's like a kid in a candy store, except the candy store is all about Christmas. So does that make The Nightmare Before Christmas a Christmas movie in disguise?
Right. Is it even possible to be disguised as something when the disguise is so obvious? I don't know, but what do you think?
Well, the podcast script we've got here makes a good case for that. Just think about it for a second. The movie explores things like joy, family, generosity, all themes we connect with Christmas.
And it does it in such a heartwarming way, too, even with the spooky backdrop.
Exactly. It's like they managed to blend those warm, fuzzy feelings of Christmas with the spooky aesthetic of Halloween.
It's true, like that scene where Jack is up in the sky with Sally and they're singing about what Christmas could be. That's not your typical Halloween vibe, right?
Not even close. It actually kind of makes you wonder if The Nightmare Before Christmas is messing with our expectations a bit. Like, is it turning the idea of a holiday movie on its head by presenting a Christmas story wrapped up in this dark Halloween package?
That's an interesting thought. Maybe it's playing with those classic tropes on purpose.
Maybe so. It wouldn't be a Tim Burton film without a little bit of mischief now, would it?
It's like we're trying to decide if candy corn belongs on a Christmas tree or something.
Right. It's this weird mix of spooky and merry, and I kind of love it.
Me too. But this podcast script, it doesn't just analyze the movie in a vacuum, you know? It goes beyond that and looks at how The Nightmare Before Christmas has impacted our culture.
And it's a big one.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. Especially here in the U.S. and over in the U.K., it's like this movie burrowed its way into both Halloween and Christmas.
It really did. I mean, think about it this time of year. You can't escape Nightmare Before Christmas merchandise.
I know. T-shirts, mugs, ornaments, you name it. It's everywhere.
And what about those special screenings they do around Halloween and Christmas? People lining up to relive the magic on the big screen.
Yes. And let's not forget about the theme parks. Our script mentions Disneyland's Haunted Mansion. They do this incredible Nightmare Before Christmas overlay that runs from Halloween straight through Christmas.
I know. It's like the most popular ride at Disneyland during that time.
Because everybody loves it. You know, it's funny, even Disneyland can't seem to decide which holiday it belongs to, so they just embrace both.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of the movie's appeal.
Yeah.
You know, it defies categorization. It doesn't fit neatly into one box, and that resonates with people.
Totally. It's like the movie is saying, why choose one when you can have both? And you know what that makes me think of? The part of the script that always gets me excited. The fan theories.
Ah, yes. Fan theories. Gotta love them.
Right. Because for a movie that's often seen as a kid's film, The Nightmare Before Christmas has sparked some pretty deep interpretations.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's a whole rabbit hole of fan theories out there.
There really is. Like the script talks about one theory that suggests Jack Skellington is actually going through an existential crisis.
Which is so interesting to think about, right? You've got Jack the Pumpkin King. He's at the top of his game in Halloween Town.
He's got it made.
Exactly. But he's still searching for something more. He stumbles upon Christmas, and it's like he's seeing a whole new world full of possibilities, a way to break out of the monotony.
It adds a whole other dimension to the story and to Jack's character.
It does. It makes you see him in a different light.
It does. And as if that wasn't enough, the script also brings up the theory that the different residents of Halloween Town could actually represent different aspects of Jack's personality.
Oh, yeah. That's a popular one. Like, they're all little pieces of him.
It's like his own internal struggle playing out on screen.
And you never know. Maybe that was intentional on the part of the filmmakers.
Maybe. But the script doesn't just focus on the lighter side of fan theories. It also touches on some darker interpretations.
Oh, right. Like the theory about the movie being a metaphor for death and the afterlife.
That's the one. With Halloween Town symbolizing purgatory. I mean, it's a bit heavy, but it makes you think.
It does make you think.
And it just goes to show you how much depth there is to this film.
Right. It can be interpreted on so many levels, from lighthearted fun to thought-provoking commentary on life and death. The Nightmare Before Christmas, it really has it all.
It really does.
And this is where our script takes a really interesting turn.
Oh.
Yeah, it kind of throws the question back at the audience.
How so?
What it asks us, point blank, Halloween or Christmas, when do you watch the movie?
I like that.
It's true. And the script even shares some listener responses, and let me tell you, it's all over the map. Some people are adamant that it's a Halloween tradition, got watching with their spooky decorations and everything.
Makes sense.
Right. And then others, they've fully embraced it as part of their Christmas celebrations.
I've seen those Jack Skellington ornaments right there next to Santa.
I know, it's wild. But it just goes to show you there's no right or wrong answer here. It's like the movie itself, it just transcends those categories. It really does. Which is why we want to hear from you, dear listener. Where do you stand on this very important debate?
Exactly. We've gone through the arguments, we've looked at the visuals, the story, the themes.
Even those crazy fan theories?
Right. So now it's your turn, Halloween, Christmas, both. What does The Nightmare Before Christmas mean to you?
Because ultimately that's what makes this whole discussion so much fun.
I think so too.
It challenges our assumptions about what a holiday movie can be. Maybe it's not about picking a side.
You know what I think? Maybe it's about that feeling you get when you watch it. Those warm, fuzzy, nostalgic vibes.
Absolutely. Those are the things that really matter. The memories we create around a film.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about something. The script mentions how much this film resonates with people.
Yeah, it's true. It struck a chord with audiences for decades.
And I think it goes beyond just the Halloween versus Christmas thing, you know?
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Maybe The Nightmare Before Christmas, it's about something we all experience at some point.
Like what?
That desire for something new, you know, that feeling of being stuck in a rut, like you're meant for something more.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
I mean, Jack Skellington, he's literally a skeleton who stumbles upon Christmas. And it's like he's seeing the world for the first time.
And suddenly he's questioning everything he thought he knew.
Exactly. It's that universal longing to break free, to find your own version of Christmastown, even if you feel trapped in Halloween Town.
And that's something we can all relate to no matter what time of year it is.
Exactly. So maybe The Nightmare Before Christmas, it's not about picking a side. It's about embracing those different parts of ourselves.
The spooky and the merry, the familiar and the unknown.
Beautifully said. Well, folks, there you have it. Another deep dive complete.
Until next time.
Thanks for joining us.